I don't know what my voice sounds like to you now, but I have kind of a weird voice, I've been told. Does it sound weird to you? You can tell me. All right. And I am a little congested, so, maybe my voice is sounding a little bit, more sexy than normal. That was a joke.
That's the incredibly sexy voice of Sue Rose. And in 1997, she created the animated television show Pepper Ann. But if you were at a party, you would only hear about that from other people, and not from Rose herself. Sue Rose is like your friend who can't figure out why you want to know anything about her, even though you haven't seen her in 10 years. And she's a bit Holden Caulfield, far more interested in the tangential than the coherent narrative. She's private, so content being a wallflower that sometimes she speaks in such a whisper, it sounds like it's only to herself, as if she forgot she was talking to other people. It's these qualities that appear to conflict with why Rose is an important figure in animation. She was the first woman to create an animated television show for Disney, and it would take another 17 years before a woman would run a show at Disney again. But Sue Rose is awkward and goofy. She even sounds a bit like a grown-up Pepper Ann, which doesn't match the public's perception of someone who shatters glass ceilings. So here's how it happened.
It's kind of a linear map, but and I always refer to as these experiences that led me to television as kind of stepping stones, but not a traditional path. And getting to Disney was kind of like sometimes when you're waiting in line for coffee or you're waiting for a bathroom, and you've been there, there's a whole long line behind you and in front of you, and then some people come from a different area and they don't realize there's a line, they just go like doo-doo-doo, and they get in front of you, and then they make an order, or they walk into the bathroom, and you're like, hey, what? And getting to Disney was, in retrospect, sort of, I knew somebody who knew somebody who knew somebody who called someone. I was working on Fido. It's, I don't know if you know Fido. Fido Dido's an animated character that was actually a licensed property. And, that reminds me, I thought of a really important part. Start at the beginning. I went to art school. I got out of art school, with fine arts background, and I'm like, now what the heck am I going to do? So I worked in a factory airbrushing designs on T-shirts. And so, one would say on the front, turn the beat around, in the back, love to hear percussion from a song, a disco song from the 70s. Not very exciting jobs, but they were fun. And my father, who was in service during World War II, and this guy called my dad to see if he could offer a job to someone that he knew. And so they were talking about their kids, what's going on. And my father said, well, my daughter's a starving artist in New York City. And do you know anybody who's looking for someone? He said he knew someone who worked in advertising. And did I want to meet them? And I knew nothing about any of that stuff. All I was doing was I was interested in going out at night, what my outfit would be. So I said, sure. The guy said, we're looking for a junior art director. And this was at J. Walter Thompson, which was like a big advertising agency in New York City. I had to look at a book to see what advertising art directors even did. And I had, this was way before CDs and putting your artwork into JPEGs. I had this big, giant portfolio from art school, and I dragged it on the bus to J. Walter Thompson. I met this guy, and I got a job. It was a real job with a week's vacation and money. involved. The thing is that I went to art school during the conceptual art heyday, so I didn't really learn any skills, but there was a lot of idea making. So I learned how to come up with an idea, a concept, and then every element put into the execution of that concept was there for a reason. And I think that skill certainly helped me later in learning to pitch, learning to come up with a pitch, but also the most important thing, actually, this is even more important than that. The most important thing to me was always humor. And I made art at the time that my parents could relate to because it was funny. And so everything I did had to have some kind of humor or edge to it. Even though I considered the concept to be serious, the entry point was always through a joke. For instance, I'm working with photography. This was, again, before computers and before you really could manipulate images and sort of easily the way it is now. I had a piece called Foot in Mouth. It was a photograph of myself with my mouth wide open, mounted it on a piece of cardboard, cut the hole of my mouth out, and stuck my foot in it, and wore it around that way. It was like, heads with mouths in them. It sounds kind of dumb now, but I thought it was genius because here I am playing with the two-dimensionality of a photograph, using it in a three-dimensional way, and also it was really funny. So things like that. And when I went to J. Walter Thompson, they liked my ideas and they liked my humor. So I got a job and I went to work in advertising at J. Walter Thompson for 5 years, 4 or 5 years. And then I went to a smaller agency because I really liked print. I love to draw. Drawing was my thing. So I wasn't so much into making TV commercials as I was in making ads for magazines. Just kind of weird because everybody always strives to do TV and nobody wants to do Reynolds Wrap magazine ads. But that's what I liked. I also liked working on my own. I liked doing that as opposed to like tens of millions of people telling you what to do in a TV commercial. So while I was at the smaller agency called Gear Dubois on 17th Street in Manhattan, my friend Joanna Ferrone, she had a stock photography agency in the next block. At Gear Dubois, I was doing Life magazine advertising, and I would draw very small and blow it up big, so the line was really distressed. And we would go out for drinks after work. I would draw people. I drew her, I drew me, I drew the maitre d' at the restaurant, and that became Fido. Drawing on a cocktail napkin became Fido, and I blew it up really big, and the line was really kind of thick and lots of chunks taken out of it, and visually it was very naive looking, like a big crayon. We put it on T-shirts. People started getting interested in who is Fido. And the most important thing to us, I think, was, I think, I'm sorry, I am rambling, and you're going to have fun trying to put these pieces together. But, well, when you're talking to young people, and our audience for Fido, were hip people and young people in New York who were wearing these T-shirts. I always said I liked using my opportunity responsibly. I wanted acceptance. I wanted tolerance. I wanted, treat yourself well and treat everyone else well as the important messages to get out there. And also to be able to laugh at yourself. And so with Fido, one of my favorite things, we had a poster that says, most folks are oddballs and that's what makes us even. Things like normal is boring was a big one for us. They weren't rebellious. They were like, this is an important thing for kids to know about themselves. Fido started out on t-shirts. We got involved in United Media Licensing, and through there, we went all over the world. Fido was, on Band-Aids in Japan. And throughout all of this was this message of dare to be different, be yourself. So Fido started in 85. In the early 90s, my advertising partner, Patty Harney, was at Leo Burnett in Chicago. And she was working on 7-Up International. I'm sorry, Jake, I'm going on and on and on, but, oh, yeah. Okay, so she knew of Fido, which the attitude was dare to be different, stand out from the crowd. And that was what they were using as their campaign for 7-Up International. So they wanted to use Fido as the spokes cartoon for 7-Up International. My drawings of Fido were always influenced by old Popeye cartoons, Max Fleischer, Olive Oyl. They were long, thin-limbed, sort of rubbery, like a three-dimensional stick figure. And I used to collect zillions of comic books and European graphic novels. A Dutch artist named Joost Swart, and his characters were all so languid and long-limbed. The drawings of Fido's body were definitely inspired by those types of illustrations and cartoons. And I went to the UK and I met Russell Hall, who designed Jessica Rabbit in Who Framed Roger Rabbit. So he was the first person to animate Fido. It was such a wonderful experience, and it was crazy to kind of walk the way Fido would walk and push his glasses up on his nose, and to see this guy be able to recreate that in animation was just mind-blowing. So we did these amazing 7-Up International commercials, and you can find them on YouTube. They're terrific. And from there, we were then asked to do the Saturday morning interstitials, those 10-second things that happen between the commercials and the cartoons, using Fido. We did 127 10-second bits, and they were so fun. Pretty much anything you can think of, you can put into this 10-second bit. It's amazing what you could accomplish in 10 seconds, and that was really fun. And at that point, I knew Ellen DeGeneres. She was just beginning, so this was again in the early 90s, and she did a voice on the Fido bumpers. That was my first going to Hollywood and going to a recording studio and doing voiceover. So those were animated in New York by the Ink Tank. That was R.O. Bleckman and J.J. Settlemeyer. The music was done by this genius, Tom Pomposello. We had to do, they were like little tiny bits of musical jewels. I love working in sound bites, really. It's like the best thing. Making greeting cards or doing 5 or 10 second bumpers, or maybe they were 5 seconds. Yeah, no, I'm thinking they were 5 seconds. It's so much easier than writing a script. and you can do a lot in a short amount of time. From there, while I was working on Fido, Bonnie Fuller was the editor of YM magazine, which was called Young Miss, like way back in the day. But then I think at that point they had changed it to Young and Modern. She asked for a Fido cartoon, which would be a comic strip in the magazine, but wanted a female character. So Pepper Ann began as a comic strip in that magazine. And I did that from 92 to 95. Pepper was my partner, Joanna Brown. My Fido partner's dog was named Pepper. And Ann was the middle name of just about everybody I knew. So that's how Pepper Ann was named. Pepper Ann was sort of loosely autobiographical. And Fido wasn't really, there was no narrative to Fido. It was just sound bites. And the t-shirts were more, philosophical. But Pepper Ann was much more based in reality. And she was, I think the comic strips, she was 14, somewhere between 12 and 14. So those strips were based on all of the crap that a 12-year-old girl has to go through. Everything from, bad skin to crushes to learning how to deal with mothers, and I was just looking at them because I was like, oh my God, I don't remember anything. I have to go to Wikipedia and read about myself because I don't even know. Oh gosh, that was one. Anyway, she was her own worst enemy, her own best friend, her own worst enemy. She had a pimple, and so she's like saying, I can't find this strip, but it's like, oh, I know, I shouldn't be worrying about this when there are starving people here, when the Siberian tigers are almost extinct, and there's so many more important things to worry about in the world, and here I am moaning and groaning about having a pimple, and then just realizing that she would be so much better at solving the world's problems if she had better skin. Things like that. And so I had Fido Animation, and I had the Pepper Ann strip. Through J.J. Settlemeyer, I met Linda Saminsky, who was at Nickelodeon. She was also a fan of Fido, but I sent her all this stuff and said, do you want to make a TV show? And she really liked it, so we started to pursue that. In the meantime, she said, well, we're also doing this thing at Nickelodeon called Kablam, which is going to have shorts. And so Gwen and I came up with Angela Anaconda, done with collage. Do you know Angela? That was like the original Angela was on Kablam. The original collage stuff was so super crude, which I designed with old photographs. So the Kablam Angela was done in New York. Oh gosh, and I can't remember these two brothers who did it. Really very crudely and slapped it all together.
Shooby-dooby-wop-wop-wop. My name is Angela, and you are not. Nanette Manoir is a stuck-up jerk-faced nut. And now to today's story, starring me, and not starring Nanette Manoir.
So I'm trying to think of the chronological order of these things. Anyway, so that was done, but then Angela didn't happen till later.
Disney Animated Television wanted to catch the lightning in a bottle that Nickelodeon had caught with Rugrats, Doug, and Ren and Stimpy. The executives that had guided the Disney Afternoon cartoon block had left to follow Jeffrey Katzenberg to DreamWorks, and so new executives were brought in, including Geraldine Laybourne of Nickelodeon. Instead of finding Disney's new voice, Disney began to Nickelodeonize itself, and it did so with a huge raid of Nickelodeon's talent. They bought out Doug from underneath Nickelodeon They snatched the co-creator of Rugrats, Paul Germain, and Joanne Salabeher, who had co-developed Hey Arnold. And they nabbed Sue Rose and the project she had developed at Nickelodeon, Pepper Ann.
So Pepper Ann was developed with Linda Saminsky at Nickelodeon. I had, no idea about what went into making a TV show. My longest things were like 30 seconds. And so I was introduced to, I think, Tom Warburton at that time. I don't know. I think Fido, Tom may have worked on the Fido bumpers with JJ at Ink Tank or not. I don't know. It could be. But I was introduced to Tom at some point, and just coincidentally, our drawing style was very similar. And Tom had been working in animation, so he helped me figure out how to make these characters more viable for television. Then at that point, after we had a Bible and some sort of presentation pitch, Linda Saminsky decided to leave Nickelodeon, and she went to Scholastic, I believe. And so Nickelodeon passed on Pepper Ann. But I had this really pretty presentation and a funny pitch. And then through my Ellen DeGeneres connection, I believe, somebody called somebody, and also United Media Licensing got meetings with Saban and other places that I pitched Pepper Ann to. And I got a very, very good response from Saban, who was at Fox at the time. I got a call from Disney, and I went in to pitch. I met Barry Blumberg, and I met Nahnatchka Khan, who was in development. And this is where I was saying about the not knowing anything about pitching a TV show, really, like going into a room and pitching. I had no idea of the history of this type of thing. I had no idea, first and foremost, that women were not represented at all in television animation at that point. And I just, waltzed in, made my pitch, and it was really nice and fun. I had a good time and left and, probably went out for a drink and then went back to New York and didn't really think about it. And then I got a call from Barry Blumberg, who said, or maybe even in the meeting said, that Eisner had been in his office earlier that day saying, we need to make a show about a 12-year-old girl. I don't know if that's really true, but I like the sound of it. And, that reminds me, I thought of a really important part in the beginning, in the Genesis story. Oh, can I go back? Or do you want me to just keep going? So, this is like hugely important. Geraldine Laybourne was at Disney for this tiny, tiny, tiny window. She was there. And I believe that it was because of her that Pepper Ann got picked up. So she was a huge supporter of both me and the show. And I think it was just really a matter of being in the right place at the right time. Whether or not Michael Eisner said that about wanting a show about a 12-year-old girl, I really had, I knew I had Geraldine Laybourne in my corner, and that was huge. So I forgot about that. It's very important. This is a long time ago. And I was old. I am super old, so I can't even really remember anything. But. So they said, we want to offer you a pilot. So meaning that they would make a pilot and then they'd test it and then they'd decide whether or not it's going to be picked up. And at that time he said, and Nahnatchka is going to be in charge of your project. So Nahnatchka was super young and she wanted to be a writer. And so I came back out. I went back out to LA and met with Notch, met with Barry, and talked about how a TV show is made, how a pilot gets made. I met some people, producers, character designers, background artists, all this stuff, and such talented people. It just blew me away. These artists were so great. I brought Tom Warburton on board to do characters, and there was another guy, Greg Guler from Disney, just was able to take Pepper Ann and bring her to the next level. And then that was just the visual. The writing was like a whole new world for me. And these people were so funny. I can't think of anything better than to sit in a punch-up in a room with these Pepper Ann scriptwriters and just coming up with jokes, one after the other, going so far beyond anything that could ever actually be on television. But it was one of the most enjoyable experiences of my life. Anyway, the pilot was written by Notch and Dave Hemmingson and Meredith Kalau. And then, pilots were just animatic, so they were super crude. And Disney decided to pick it up. So I moved to LA.
Who's that girl? What's her name? Is she cool? Is she lame? Oh, you're talking about what's her name? Pepper Ann. Is she lame? Is she cool? Is she breaking every rule? Is she anybody's fool? Pepper Ann. Pepper Ann. Pepper Ann. Marching in her own parade. Pepper Ann. She's like one in a million. Pepper Ann. Much too cool for 7th grade. Catch her if you can. Pepper Ann. Who?
Is that that girl from gym class?
No, that's me.
Oh. Who is she, and why does she have her own song?
Did someone take my lunch? Pepper Ann, marching in her own parade. Pepper Ann, she's like one in a million. Pepper Ann, much too cool for 7th grade. No one's cooler than Pepper Ann. She's her own biggest fan, Pepper Ann. Catch her if you can, Pepper Ann.
I moved to LA in 96. I moved my dog out there, and I went to join this industry that I really didn't know anything about. And I pretty much, when I met Notch, it was kind of like, okay, this is a great idea, and I love these characters, but Notch was like, let me show you the show you want to make. So Notch hired her friends from USC. Like, one was running, I think he was doing tours on the Universal Studios set, and one was a temp, secretarial temp, and they had literally not been out of school that long, and they came and they were our writing staff. They learned about TV at USC, and we just had a blast. It was a lot of fun.
Load, Flair. I have fully depressed myself. We need frappuccinos.
Hey, are you situation normal?
I don't know what you're saying, okay? I just know that I'm a 7th grader. I like school. I love flaming snot, and these horribly depressed-looking 7th graders are my friends.
Flair?
My name's not Flair. It's Pepper Ann. And I'm sorry, but I am not going to your party Friday night. I'm going to Nikki's party, if she'll forgive me. Look, I'd rather be myself with my friends than be someone else at the coolest party. I'm sorry I didn't tell you I was a 7th grader, but you thought I was cool, and...
Correction, I knew you were cool.
Huh?
You're loyal to your friends. It's cool. I mean, to give up a party as rad as Friday night's gonna be with all the celebrities and rock stars. Listen, I've said too much. Hey, don't wig. You'll be one freezer burn 8th grader soon enough, Flair. I mean, Pepper Ann.
Load to your mother. So, can I still come to your braces removal anniversary?
Only if you bring the corn cubettes. It's nice to have you back. So, what was it like anyway, being an 8th grader?
Like being a 7th grader, only harder.
You know, we had executives with like lame ideas that we had to deal with, but it was really fun. Yeah, occasionally somebody would tell us no, we couldn't do things, but there was always another way. Yeah, we wanted to make changes. We were doing something that hadn't been done before, making a show created by a woman and I was the first woman ever to make a TV show at Disney Television Animation. I had no idea that that was the case when I was saying I didn't know about the history. And there was not even, actually, they did not have another woman until 17 years later. Am I making sense? I wanted to tell a story about an awkward girl who didn't want to melt into the background, who wanted to stand out, but didn't want to stand out in a bad way. But she wanted to be appreciated for her quirkiness and her uniqueness. She had a single working mother. When I say loosely autobiographic, I had a lovely father and two parents, married and loved each other for over 63 years. But the primary relationship of that 12-year-old girl was her mother. And it just really made sense to just have that one parent. Also, no one at that point had represented the single working mother.
Police, you've got it so easy compared to me. All you have to do is go to your job at the mall, cook dinner, do a little laundry. Your life is totally kicked back.
Uh-huh. And what's stressing you out? The pressures of roller skating, the aches and pains of surfing the web? Or is it all that back-breaking chatting on the phone?
People often asked me at the time, like, so did Disney tell you what they were looking for, and then did you go home and make it? It wasn't ever that. It was, here's a story I want to tell. I think that we could tell that story here at Disney. And so the working with Notch and Laura McCreary and Miris Kalau and Madeline Paxson, we all had this interest of telling stories about women, strong women. One of my favorite aspects of Pepper Ann was that she meant well, but she made so many mistakes, which was so real to me. She'd make mistakes to be super funny because they were obviously mistakes. For instance, when Pepper Ann realizes that she has a tiny percentage of Native American, and she just goes nuts and over the top wrongness about dealing with very sensitive issues about identity and cultural identity, rather. And then we have an opportunity to rectify that, to tell it correctly in a really funny way.
All I know is that I'm 1/8 Navajo, so I guess that makes you 1/16 American Indian, Pepper Ann.
You mean I'm a real-life Indian? Cool!
For my presentation, I will be tracing the religious struggles of the Little family in Britain, from the early stages of Calvinism through their pilgrimage to the New World in the mid-18th century.
Check it out! I'm an Indian! It's all set. Mom helped me track down some real live Navajos living right here in Hazelnut. They're coming over tonight to help me with my report.
Ask them about their art and craft techniques, PA. Navajo weaving is totally legendary.
The contributions of all American Indian tribes to our national culture have been long overlooked.
Oh, I totally know what you mean. Where would the Lone Ranger have been without Tonto? You cannot hope to understand the special bond I share with my tribe. Unlike you two, we paint with all the colors of the wind.
You must be Pepper Ann.
How? Now don't tell me, let me guess. You must be something like Taming Bear or He Who Shoots Arrow with Big Bow. Am I close?
Well, I'm Dave. This is my mom and dad, Carol and Bob. And the quiet one in the back is my grandfather, Andy.
You know, not all American Indians have American Indian names.
Who's up for a little rain dance? Whoa, 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 whoa.
Enough! Do you have any idea how offensive this is to our culture? I thought you invited us here to learn about being Navajo.
Oh, totally. I want to learn how to sneak up on people without them hearing, how to give gifts and take them right back again. You know, all that good stuff.
Everyone, the car. Now.
What? What did I do? Can't we just smoke on the peace pipe and talk this over?
I recognize your belt. Both these Navajo concho belts were made by my great-grandfather, an ancestor we both share. Unfortunately, that is all we share.
What happened? I thought I was just learning about my background.
That's just it, Peppy. You weren't interested in learning anything. They barely got to talk.
All I wanted to do was show them how much I knew about our culture from stuff I picked up on TV and in the movies and from comic books and...
Yes, but that's what stereotyping is, Peppy. Even when it's done with the best of intentions. You can't believe things about any group of people without getting to know them first.
I'm sorry to bother you, but, I guess I owe you all an apology.
What's she doing here? Tell Polka Moranis to hit the bricks or I'll...
I respect you for coming here, and I believe that your intentions are good. But the best way to learn about any people is to drop your preconceived notions and approach them with an open mind and heart.
I feel like the writers were doing, again, and Jake, I know I'm all over the place here, and I'm going back and forth and back and forth. And it's always like, these are sound bites where it's like, wait, oh, this is important, but that has nothing to do with what I'm just talking about. But that's okay. Jake will put it in order. So I feel like Pepper Ann was, like I said, when Notch said, this is a show you want to make. I always say that I created Pepper Ann, but Notch and the team really developed it. And I would be there to make sure that things felt right, but I really trusted the writers. I trusted Notch in particular to be responsible with the opportunity, talking to kids, and to be funny, for sure. So anyway, so what I'm saying, I always wanted to use these opportunities, talking to kids responsibly. I wanted to talk to kids who were, who felt like outsiders, but in small steps. I never had any agenda, but yes, it was important to have a strong female character, and it's important for everyone to be able to see themselves on television, and it's important for girls to see strong female characters, and it's important for boys to see strong female characters and have shows about women.
Rose found herself in an interesting predicament. In telling her own story filled with unique, colorful characters, she had inadvertently run aground of Disney's ever-changing moral compass. Unfortunately, there was a recent litmus test that had shown what Disney's true colors were. Disney's ABC had already dealt with public backlash from Ellen DeGeneres coming out on ABC. According to Ellen, the writers told the executives that they wanted me to come out because my character needed to be in a relationship after 4 years of not being in a relationship. Someone at the studio said, well, get her a puppy. She's not coming out. The executives eventually relented to the idea, but the backlash was intense. In the next season, there were constant bomb sweeps of the studio where they shot. Laura Dern, Ellen's love interest in the episode, faced a period of blacklisting, and by the next season, the show would be canceled. According to the New York Times, Ellen clashed with ABC executives this season over the content of many of the show's episodes. ABC executives had asked that not every episode be on a gay theme, and at one point, ordered that a special viewer's advisory about content be included. Miss DeGeneres protested, saying that shows that depicted heterosexual relationships were not required to include such warnings. She threatened to resign from the show, but stayed on and finished the season. The ratings of the show had been slipping, and so when it was finally canceled, Variety wrote the unsubtly titled article, "From the Closet to the Attic, ABC drops the axe on Ellen." At the time, Ellen was still averaging an audience of 12.4 million people per week. However, the aftermath for Ellen would be much worse. She became a national punchline and would have a hard time finding work. She later reflected, "Time is a strange thing. I was at rock bottom and out of money, with no work in sight. But one step at a time, it gets better. It gets much better than better." Ellen, of course, became one of America's sweethearts, with her movie for kids, Finding Nemo, and her own talk show. But Nemo was in 2003, and this was 1997, and Sue Rose could read the tea leaves. She only needed to look at what happened to an LGBTQ show for adults to see that America wasn't ready for a leading gay character. And a gay character on a kids' TV show was definitely out of the question in the 90s. But that didn't stop Rose from pushing the envelope.
The executives knew I was gay. I think they were concerned about my gay agenda. I think it was around the time that Ellen DeGeneres came out. And also, I had, at one point, we were talking about an episode where the kids would follow someone in their lives who really inspired them. And so Milo was going to follow his hero, which is Aunt Kathy's life partner, who was a pit crew boss for a race car team. And so we were like, ha ha, and people were, not just saying, you can't put that in there, or someone said that. And I said, well, let's not edit ourselves. Let's put it in, and we'll see what happens. This is just in script before it would go to standards and practices and the executives. So, of course, that got knocked down, which was fine, and we went and changed it to something else funny. Another episode was the episode where Pepper Ann misunderstood getting support for jumping on a trampoline to mean that she was to get a bra, and she had never worn a bra. She was 12 and pretty skinny, flat-chested. So in that episode, in the script, she gets Milo to try the bras on for her because she was too embarrassed, and they were totally embarrassing her in the store, which really did happen for me. But so she decides, instead of her trying on the bras, which would be terrible, and she asked her friend Milo to try them on, and then she could get a better idea of how they look. So that went, that was accepted. That was a script. It went to animation, and then they got cold feet, and the powers that be, I don't remember who it was specifically, but said that has to change. We had to change that. So we changed it to Moose, her sister, trying on the bras. And then I was also told that because Milo wore a beanie, and there was the beanie of the rim of the beanie was a rainbow, the rainbow colors. Someone said, and I know that that's the gay rainbow. Wait, we have our own rainbow? I didn't even know that. I thought, just like there's a rainbow in the sky. Those are the colors. I mean, nobody ever questioned us about the character of Moose, Pepper Ann's little sister, who at the time was just based on my own sister, who was younger than me, but could beat me up so easily. It was so great to have this character of Moose be like completely comfortable with who she was. Is she a boy? Is she a girl? It was way back in the day before we ever heard of, or before I heard of non-binary or gender fluid, and all of the topics that are so pervasive now. But it was just, this is a person that I know, and it was not, in retrospect, it's easy to see how important it was, but I wasn't really aware of it. You know what I mean? It does, because because you want these people to be seen, and you want them to be represented. And so I wasn't, we weren't saying, here are the marginalized people that need representation. It was just like, here's some really funny characters that haven't been seen before and deserve to have, their moment out there. Again, I don't think we're saying this is groundbreaking. I think we're just saying this is real. So then I think it was one thing led to another, and they're like, they thought that I wanted one of the characters to come out. And so I was called to going all the way up the ladder, ending, I think, with Geraldine Laybourne at the time. And no, I wasn't scared because I thought it was more like, oh God, eye rolling. Like, seriously? You're questioning me when all I've ever been concerned with was to do this, I keep saying the word responsibly, but to make change, yes, but bit by bit. But I think it was important to have Milo, to pitch that, to write that, Milo trying on the bras, even though he had a girlfriend that wasn't his deal, it wasn't his story. It was important for him to say, my Aunt Kathy has a life partner. Even if it never made it on air, it made it into those offices and it started pushing, but there was no fight. Wasn't that I thought it has to be there. There's another way, but I think that each of those moments is making some kind of step in that direction. And now it's happening. And I feel like I was a stepping stone in that process. Now it's happening where on Doc McStuffins they have characters, a kid has two moms, and there are things with kids' cartoons with women getting married and stuff like that, and gay characters and transgender characters on TV shows. I feel like what we were doing was a means to getting to that point. So important, but not consciously. Not saying I'm going to go out there and begin, or be part of history. Well, I think that it's kind of like when I was talking about not really knowing how to make a TV show and the history of pitching a show and who makes TV shows, and you just kind of walk in there and do it because you think you have a good story. And so I think I was operating from this place that I'm always coming from, where it was like, this is an important story. This is something I would like to have heard when I was a kid. These are people that need to be seen. I didn't think of it as a political choice. I thought of it as, this is how I live my life, and why can't it be on TV? Why not? I'm looking back and saying, wow, boy, you made these decisions that were so unusual for that time. But I was kind of oblivious, I think, to what was wrong and what was right in a good way. I was oblivious to naming it. It was just the normal way, just the way I was, and how I was raised. And my parents were kind and always about kindness and tolerance and openness and acceptance. I say that, and just 5 minutes earlier, I was saying how it wasn't time to talk about certain things for a kid's show, gay things. And that probably was from my own I came out when I was 17. That's like back in the dark ages. It was not artistic. It was pretty awful. I had known for a long time. I didn't know the words, but I knew something was up. You know, I'd probably told them in like, I'm thinking that maybe I might have some, maybe, I don't know, but I could possibly, you know, and, you know, my parents were all like, oh my God, you're never gonna be able to have a job, you'll never have a place to live, you'll never, all that stuff. And I was like, what? I always had a job and I always found a place to live, and you know, the only difficulties I ever faced were in my own family. Or my mother at one point said, oh, I was wondering if you were thinking that. And of course, and sent me to a psychiatrist. You know, my mother wasn't happy, but I never had an experience that a lot of other people have, where I never did not have my parents' love and acceptance. It was tough for them. They had to make big changes in their ways of thinking. But I guess it's the same kind of thing that I'm talking about. It's sort of like, oh, this is me. I'm gay. And I'm oblivious to the repercussions I could possibly have experienced by telling them that. I don't know, Jake. I think, you know, now after this, I'm going to go away thinking like, boy, was I really stupid most of my life. Just kind of like, you know, la-di-da, going on, living.
Disney Plus was launched in November of 2019, and Disney included their Saturday morning offerings, Recess and Doug, but Pepper Ann was nowhere in sight. However, this probably came as no surprise to Sue Rose.
I find it so interesting. This might has absolutely nothing to do with anything about the making of the show, but recently there was some kind of deal with Walt Disney Television Animation, and they brought back a bunch of people, probably Paul and Joe, and people from past, the creators from past television animation shows. And they did not ask me or Notch to be there. And I thought it just blew my mind. I didn't even know about it. And some, you know, people were saying, why weren't you there? And I don't understand why. Oh, wait, I do understand why. I mean, that there's obviously so much more pushing that needs to be done. It's really a man's deal, and you know, a white man's deal, and that's who was there representing. It's harder for women, people of color. It's harder for the unexpected people to have opportunities. And that's what's got to change. And it is changing. You know, it's time for Doc McStuffins to happen. And it's certainly, gosh, we know from everything we do, every movie we see, we need more women and we need more people of color. We need more representation. And it's happening, but, you know, tiny little baby steps. But there's still so much more that needs to be done. You know, I wish that things could have continued to progress after Pepper Ann quickly, but they don't move quickly. It's happening, but still, it's very slow. It's very slow.
Sue Rose made great strides in Disney's historic boys' club, but she still wonders if she should have done more.
I feel that we made big step by just making that show. by making the show we made was a big step. Then it's up to the next people to move further and further. Because you can't do it all at once and bang people over the head with stuff they're not ready for. There will be a time. And I feel like we did make progress and make changes happen by making that show. And I don't think it would have been heard properly. It would have been more of an outrage. And that's not what I wanted to do. So yeah, I'm also looking back on these things with the eyes of like, hey, I'm super happy where I am right now. And all of these things that I went through in my life, have led me through these twists and turns and experiences, and some were like bad and some were great, but I wouldn't want to be anywhere else and be anyone else. And so I'm looking back on it with like, oh yeah, maybe it was awkward, but it's okay, I survived it. But it's true. It's true. You just go through shit, and if you're lucky to survive it, I'm thrilled with where I am. So I'm a living platitude.